in this video, I'm going to give an introduction to decision rights, and I'm also going to cover some tips and common mistakes for folks who want to use decision rights with their own team. So first, what are decision rights? Decision rights are the articulation of the specific choices a role or team can make without the approval of others. They're also a way to actually and practically empower people because they clarify the guardrails within which a role or team can operate autonomously. And lastly, they are just a better way to make decisions that won't cause irreparable harm. So if a decision is relatively low risk when trusted with an expert, and especially if it's recurring, decision rights allow for faster and more strategic work to be done. So what does that actually look like? Well, the most useful decision rights are specific and also focus on choices that are critical to our work. And so here we have an example of very common sort of general language and how that compares to specific decision right language. So for example, rather than saying a role is responsible for or owns brand awareness, when we dig into decision rights, we'll specify that the brand role can decide when to spend up to $50,000 in service of brand strategy. Similarly, when a role is sort of said to be responsible for ensuring effective delivery, when we dig into decision rights, we ask what is the authority that role has to ensure effective delivery. And so, for example, we might determine that same role has the authority to decide when and how and who to hire into new roles onto the team in service of effective delivery. And similar examples for owning operations and website content, right? Anytime we say a role is responsible for or owns a body of work, we also have to ask this question of what authority they have to deliver the work. And that requires getting a little bit more specific and defining things like when and how to change timeline of delivery. And also to clarify, when we're talking about something like website content, what role has the decision right to determine when language is final and what the final format of that content should be. And as you go through that work and have those conversations, it's really important to keep these two principles in mind. People positive, which means trusting people to use good judgment and trusting that they want to be good partners and do their best work, and also complexity conscious. This means keeping in mind that we want to distribute authority and use an approach to decision rights that acknowledges things will change, we need to act quickly, and that we can't predict and control exactly how things will unfold. And so typically what that looks like is putting authority and decision rights in the same role that is responsible for the work. And also that means having a mechanism to revisit decision rights as we learn to make sure that they are tuned to our current context. And so now I just want to take a moment to clarify what this doesn't mean, because often there is some misunderstanding when it comes to decision rights because it's such a new concept. Clarifying decision rights does not mean never getting advice. It does not mean being a bad partner or operating without transparency. And it is not meant to be a tool for power grabbing. Clarifying decision rights is meant to be a tool for empowering people to do their best work. And we want to think about decision rights as enabling constraints. So what do we need to clarify to allow people, to enable people to do their best work, to do the work as quickly as they need to do it, and also to know when and how they are bumping up against a constraint or a guardrail, and they do need to pull in a partner or they do need to escalate. All right, and when to use decision rights, when are they most helpful? Typically, teams should use decision rights when they aren't sure who can make what decisions, when they tend to waste a lot of time socializing before they can move forward, or when decisions tend to be reopened. They're also a great tool when you are wanting to empower people and decentralize authority. And they are often very handy when there's been friction between cross-functional partners, because often when there's friction, it's because there is ambiguity around authority. There's ambiguity around what role on a cross-functional team actually can make the final call and where they do need to coordinate before they can move forward. Next, some tips for drafting. As you get into this work, you want to make sure that you name choices, not categories. So for example, if you can do something, how to do something, when to do something, those are the kinds of choices that we want to clarify when we're doing decision rights work. Also, when in doubt, if you're not sure where a decision right should go, just ask who does the work? What role is responsible for the work related to this decision right? And lastly, focus on picking a way for now, not figuring out the perfect way to sort decision rates. We just want to address, current challenges, and there's no one right way to do things. So just, if you're not sure what role should have a decision right, pick one role for now, and then see how it works. You can always update things if you need to based on how the work plays out. Okay, next, some common mistakes. We often see people trying to be exhaustive. Decision rates is not meant to be an exhaustive exercise. It's meant to focus on really what is most important to clarify right now. Another common mistake is not putting decision rates with the roles that do the work. When we don't do that, when we put decision rates in a manager role or a project manager role or someone who's disconnected from the delivery of the work, we tend to just recreate the same status quo and the same bureaucracy that was getting in our way in the first place. Another common mistake is forgetting that decision rights are only one part of how a team operates. So decision rights are a tool for clarifying authority. You're going to need other things, other tools, other working agreements to address things like transparency and coordination and how you're going to collaborate. And lastly, one of the most important things to keep in mind is, you don't want to not treat it like a real agreement. If you go through the effort of clarifying decision rates, putting things down on paper, it's really critical that you treat it like a real agreement and you lean into and you live into the decision rates that you put down on paper. And related to that, another mistake is not being honest about what you're really willing to do or comfortable to do. So especially if you're in a leadership role, you want to be really honest about what decision rates you are actually okay distributing. And for the ones that you're not, it's okay. Don't do it. Clarify what you're comfortable with for now. Clarify what feels like it serves to work for now. And then test and learn and update as you go. All right, so lastly, why so structured? We use specific language to make it easier to spot differences in perspective. We name choices so the output is practically useful and we don't have to wonder things like what is included when we say someone owns brand or when we say someone owns the delivery. And lastly, we focus only on what's needed now because you can update decision rates as you learn. You don't need to figure it all out up front, and often it's better to revisit to make sure that things are really informed by the current context. All right, and last thing, a note on how they get drafted. Decision rates should be co-created with the team members and partners involved in the work, not in isolation or without discussion. Well-written decision rates are extremely useful and important, and without the dialogue around them, we don't get the insight, alignment, and understanding that actually brings them to life. And so that's it. That's all we're going to cover on decision rates. I hope you take the leap and get the benefits of clarifying decision